I think there's two ways that we're hoping to approach this. One is that if the states really do put in the kind of robust system that we're asking them to, where there's control from seed to sale, that it will help really tamp down that kind of export out of Colorado into other states. And secondly, and at least as importantly, one of the main priorities we have is the export of marijuana from states that make it legal to any other state. And that will be a federal enforcement priority. If it's being exported from Colorado to Iowa and we find out about it, we will prosecute it.
So as you can imagine, this was a mess. So I appreciate very much that the August 29th letter straightens out that mess considerably. I don't dispute the sense of the 8 different federal priorities, but I just want to, actually there's considerable but imperfect overlap between your 8 priorities and the priorities from the original Ogden memo, lo those many years and memos ago. But let me just be clear. As long as they are not the proper subjects of federal prosecution under the 8 2013 memo federal interests, a dispensary can do business as long as it is in clear and unambiguous compliance with state law, correct?
I think the proper way to phrase it, Senator Whitehouse, is as long as they are not violating any of the 8 federal priorities in the course of what they're doing, that the federal government is not going to prosecute them. And the state law is up to state law and up to state enforcement.
Understood.
But there also is, just in all fairness, there is a catch-all at the end, and it's not meant to swallow the entire memo, but you can't anticipate everything that's going to come into the future. So there's an ability, if it's an important enough matter that we hadn't anticipated, to prosecute another kind of case, even if it doesn't fall within the 8 priorities.
Understood. And those who receive proceeds from a lawful and proper state law enterprise will also not be prosecuted unless they violate one of the 8 federal interests.
This is something that we're trying to work through with the banking regulators, because the memo really talks about the Controlled Substances Act. Now, the prosecution otherwise on the banking end would be the money laundering statutes, and those, I think, are a separate matter, but one, as I've said, in answer to Chairman Leahy's questions, ones that we need to deal with. There's a lot of public safety and public interest aspects of that I think we need to deal with as we go down this road, and we're working on that.
But you're not intending to put people who are simply getting their bills paid by a proper, lawful, state law enterprise from being the subject. It's not your intention that they be the subject of prosecution. In the same way that if you knew it was a criminal cartel and you, no matter what your business is, the proceeds of that cartel carry some taint with them, and you can go after individuals just because they receive money. You can, if nothing else, reclaim the funds as the proceeds of criminal activity. You're not intending to use that unless those 8 federal interests are implicated.
I think that's part of what we're trying to work through right now in trying to deal with the money laundering aspect of it. But certainly this memo is meant to guide our enforcement efforts concerning marijuana in regard to the Controlled Substances Act, and it'll probably spill over in other ways as we're trying to work through them.
And similarly, property owners, landlords, and financiers should not fear federal prosecution unless they implicate those 8 federal interests.
Certainly a lot of that is covered by the Controlled Substances Act, so that will be directly within the ambit of the memo.
So the Department of Justice, as I understand your answer, would be very cautious and deliberate about any challenge to a regulatory scheme because the results might do more harm than good.
We're going to have to look at all the facts and circumstances that come up. We've certainly put the governors of Colorado and Washington State on notice that we expect them to have robust systems. We hope that all the other states that have medical marijuana or any other sort of legalized system will view this memo as it should be taken, as telling them they ought to have a robust system to regulate the marijuana usage under their own state laws so that they deal with these 8 priorities, which we think are important. And then we'll make our decisions as we see what kind of public interest issues are raised in the course of this and what the need is for us to take action.
I understand that the memo deals only with the Controlled Substances Act, but there are also provisions of the tax code that forbid deduction of expenses by some of these enterprises, non-criminal enterprises, dispensaries, and others engaged in medicinal marijuana businesses. Has the Department of Justice taken a position on changing the tax code to make those legitimate businesses eligible to deduct common business expenses?
We have not taken a position on a change of legislation. We think that's something that the United States Congress should probably, in its wisdom, take up and debate and determine what the appropriate course of action should be.
But it would probably be consistent with your memorandum to have those expenses deducted as long as none of the other priorities are infringed on.
My experience shows me that the war on drugs has been a failure. We have not significantly reduced demand over time, but we have incarcerated generations of individuals, the highest incarceration rate in the world. So the citizens of the state of Washington decided it was time to try something new, and in November of 2012 they passed Initiative 502, which legalized recreational amounts of marijuana and at the same time created very strict rules and laws. I was a strong supporter of Initiative 502 last year, and I remain a strong supporter today. There are several reasons for that support. Most of all, I support 502 because that's what the people want. They voted for legalized marijuana. We, the government, have failed the people, and now they want to try something else. Too often the attitude of the police is, we're the cops and you're not. Don't tell us how to do our job. That's the wrong attitude, and I refuse to fall into that trap. While the title of this hearing is the conflict between state and federal marijuana laws, I don't see a huge conflict. The reality is we do have complementary goals and values. We all agree we don't want our children using marijuana. We all agree we don't want impaired drivers. We all agree we don't want to continue enriching criminals. Washington's law honors those values by separating consumers from gangs and diverting the proceeds from the sale of marijuana toward furthering the goals of public safety. In legalizing and regulating the possession of sale of marijuana, is it a better alternative? You know, I think it is, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. The only way we will know, however, is if we are allowed to try. DOJ's recent decision provides clarity on how we in Washington can continue to collaborate with the federal government to enforce our drug laws while at the same time respecting the will of the voters. It's a great step, but more needs to be done. And I hate to beat a dead horse here, but for example, we are still limited by not knowing the role of banking institutions as we go forward. Under federal law, it is illegal for banks to open checking, savings, or credit card accounts for marijuana businesses. The result is that the marijuana stores will be operated as cash only, creating two big problems for me as a police officer. Cash-only businesses are prime targets for armed robberies, and cash-only businesses are very difficult to audit, leading to possible tax evasion, wage theft, and diversion of the resources we need to protect public safety. I am simply asking the federal government to allow banks to work with legitimate marijuana businesses who are licensed under this new state law. In closing, let me make one thing abundantly clear. What we have in Washington State is not the wild, wild west. And as sheriff, I am committed to continued collaboration with the DEA, FBI, and DOJ for robust enforcement of our respective drug laws. For example, I have detectives right now that are assigned to federal task forces, including a DEA HIDTA task force. It's been a great partnership for many years, and that partnership will continue. Furthermore, the message to my deputies has been very clear. You will enforce our new marijuana laws. You will write somebody a ticket for smoking in public. You will enforce age limits. You will put unlicensed stores out of business. In other words, the King County Sheriff's Office will abide by the standards and laws voted on and adopted by the citizens of the state of Washington and the guidance provided by the Department of Justice on August 29th. Mr. Chairman, I say to you and the members of this committee, I do appreciate the deference the federal government has shown to my constituents, and I look forward to continuing that cooperation. Thank you.